A group of seemingly ordinary people, a charismatic leader, and a promise of salvation through an otherworldly journey. But this story ends not in enlightenment, but in tragedy. Welcome to the chilling tale of the Heaven's Gate cult, where belief and desperation led to one of the most infamous mass suicides in modern history. Hey dudes, welcome to the Weird and Wicked podcast, where we'll deep dive into the most bizarre and spine-chilling tales from around the world. I'm Rachel, your guide on this eerie adventure. I have an obsession with the mysterious and the unknown. Get ready to explore the most bizarre, unnerving, and unbelievable stories, from true crime and conspiracy theories to ghosts and cryptids. I'll be covering it all. Today, we unravel the tragedy that became Heaven's Gate, a chilling mark in history that continues to baffle the world. Warning, this episode discusses themes of mass suicide, cults, and graphic descriptions, which may be disturbing for some listeners. Listener discretion is advised. So Heaven's Gate was always one of those cults that everyone knows about. They know the general idea of what happened, if you're into this sort of stuff at least. While true crime is my main passion, I can watch hours of true crime stuff online and still not get enough. Cults have always fascinated me just because of the psychological perspective of them. So I was like, why not do a cult? And I saw on HBO that there was the documentary. Now I forget what it's called. Gosh, it was something. You'll be able to find it if you search it. I think it's on Max. Heaven's Gate something. I'll be mentioning it later. Now I totally forget it. It's been a week since I watched it. But I saw that and I was like, oh, let me dive into this, because I always knew sort of what happened, but I never dove in and got the details and super got into it at all. But I just think that cults are so fascinating because one or two leaders of the group can brainwash and change the minds of so many people. And I think it's just amazing because they're either taking vulnerable people and giving them a purpose or, giving them a community to thrive in. And then they're slowly grooming them and slowly brainwashing them to, believe their doctrine and follow what they say to a T. It's just fascinating how your typical person who's functioning in society can just leave their families, join a religious group, and just fall into that mix. And we really only see the big ones like Heaven's Gate, Jonestown, Charles Manson. There's so many big ones, but sometimes not everyone notices the small ones, and I feel like that's where people get caught up in it, and then it just grows from there on out. But yeah, the psychology around it is just really fascinating to me. So I love deep diving into cults. I'd love to do a deep dive on Jonestown because that one is freaking insane. And then there's a few others too we'll probably touch on in the near future because I just think it's crazy how this happens. And it happens a lot. So anyways, let's jump in. Picture this. It's just after midnight on a warm July night. The stars are shining brightly in the clear New Mexico sky, and Alan Hale is in his driveway, peering through his telescope. Hale had spent countless hours searching the sky, hoping to discover something extraordinary. Little did he know, this night would change everything. As he adjusted his telescope, he chanced upon an object that immediately caught his attention, a glowing point of light near the Sagittarius constellation. The object was bright enough to stand out, but just faint enough to elude the naked eye. Hale meticulously checked his star charts and directories, confirming that there were no known deep sky objects or comets in that area of the sky. Excited yet cautious, he observed the object's movement relative to the background stars, ensuring it wasn't a figment of his imagination. Convinced that he had found something new, he promptly emailed the Central Bureau of Astronomical Telegrams, the official clearinghouse for astronomical discoveries. Meanwhile, Thomas Bopp was out with friends near Stanfield, Arizona. Unlike Hale, Bopp didn't even own a telescope. But that night, while gazing through his friend's telescope, he too spotted the mysterious object near the Sagittarius constellation. Bopp, realizing he might have stumbled upon something significant, checked his star maps and confirmed that no other objects were supposed to be there. He sent a telegram to the Central Bureau of Astronomical Telegrams, making his discovery known. By the time Bob's telegram reached the Bureau, Alan Hale had already sent several emails with updated coordinates. The next morning, it was confirmed. A new comet had been discovered. The celestial wonder was officially designated as C 1995-01, but it would come to be known as the Hale-Bopp comet. The comet quickly became visible to the naked eye, captivating stargazers around the world. As it approached the sun, it grew brighter, displaying a stunning pair of tails, a blue gas tail pointing straight away from the sun and a yellowish dust tail curving along its orbit. By March 1997, the Hale-Bopp comet was a spectacular sight, shining brighter than any star except Sirius and stretching 40 to 45 degrees across the sky. Okay, so I'm sure you're thinking, why am I even going on about this comet? What does this astrological phenomenon have to do with Heaven's Gate? Well, this is where things take a very dark turn. The Heaven's Gate cult, led by Marshall Applewhite, believed that the Hale-Bopp comet was a celestial sign. They thought it was their ticket to the next level, a higher plane of existence. What happened next is a tragic and chilling story of how a group of people were led to believe that they could transcend their human forms and join an extraterrestrial spaceship trailing the comet. Join me as we delve into the details of this cult, their beliefs, and the tragic events that unfolded in March 1997. But first, let's take a closer look at the Heaven's Gate cult and the charismatic leader who convinced his followers to take such a drastic step. Let's start with Marshall Applewhite. Born in the small town of Spur, Texas in 1931, Marshall was the son of a Presbyterian minister. His father, who was deeply devout in his faith, expected Marshall to follow in his footsteps. Growing up in a strict religious household, Marshall was immersed in the teachings and rituals of the church from a young age. Despite the rigid environment, Marshall was a bright and curious child. He showed a keen interest in music and theater, often participating in school plays and church choir. As he grew older, Marshall's passions for the arts only deepened. He decided to pursue higher education and enrolled at Austin College in Sherman, Texas. There, he pursued a degree in philosophy, a field that allowed him to explore existential questions and the nature of human existence. During his time at Austin College, Marshall met Ann Pierce, a fellow student. The two quickly fell in love and got married. They seemed like the perfect couple, and soon after, they welcomed two children into their lives. After graduating, Marshall was drafted into the U.S. Army during a time when the country was involved in the Korean War. His time in the military was pretty unremarkable, marked by routine duties and the discipline of military life. He served as a member of the Army Signal Corps, a role that involved managing military communications. After completing his military service, Marshall decided to return to academia. He enrolled in a music program at the University of Colorado, where he could nurture his love for singing and musical performance. Upon completing his studies, he secured a teaching position at the University of Alabama as a chorus professor. Here, he was able to share his passion for music with his students. However, it was during this time period that Marshall began to face a personal crisis. He struggled with his sexuality, an issue that was particularly challenging given the conservative and religious upbringing he had experienced. The internal conflict he faced grew more intense, and eventually he began an inappropriate relationship with a male student. This relationship was a turning point in his life. The affair was eventually discovered, leading to a scandal that rocked his personal life. The university fired him, and his wife, Anne, was devastated by the betrayal. Unable to cope with the revelation and the stigma associated with it, she filed for divorce, taking their 2 children with her. Hey guys, editing Rachel here. I totally left out a paragraph here, so I'm going to read it real quick for y'all. The divorce and the loss of his family were crushing blows for Marshall. He moved back with his parents, seeking solace and support. However, when he confided in them about his struggles, he faced rejection instead of understanding. His parents, unable to accept his situation, shunned him, leaving Marshall feeling isolated and abandoned. Despite these challenges, Marshall continued to seek meaning and purpose in his life. He found a new job at the University of St. Thomas in Houston, Texas, where he taught music. For a while, it seemed like he had found a semblance of stability. But history repeated itself when he had another inappropriate relationship with a student. This incident led to his dismissal from the university. The loss of his job at the University of St. Thomas was a significant blow to Marshall Applewhite. It was not just the end of his professional career, it was a personal failure that echoed his previous setbacks. As he struggled to find his footing once again, life dealt him another devastating blow. In 1971, Marshall's father, a figure of moral authority and the person who had shaped much of his early life, passed away. His father's death marked a profound and painful turning point. For Marshall, the loss was not just the death of a parent, it symbolized the crumbling of the last pillar of stability in his life. His father had always represented a strict, unyielding standard of righteousness and piety, a standard Marshall felt he could never live up to. The combination of professional disgrace and personal grief plunged Marshall into a deep depression. He felt adrift and isolated, his life unraveling with each day passing. He began to experience severe mental strain and confusion. The voices he began hearing were relentless, whispering doubts and fears that further eroded his fragile sense of self. Desperate for relief from the overwhelming turmoil, Marshall admitted himself into a psychiatric hospital in Houston. He was a man seeking solace, looking for answers and a way to silence the chaos in his mind. His admission records indicate that he sought to be cured of his homosexuality, a reflection of the deep-seated conflict between his desires and the strict religious morals he had been raised with. So pretty much we have this guy raised super religious, very strict household, and, he had a decent life going for himself. He had a wife and kids. He served in the army. He had great jobs in a profession that he loved. But with those mistakes, his life just crumbled. And he was a shell of a man, pretty much, especially after his father died. So, what did he do? He decided to check himself into a psychiatric hospital. And, around, I think this time it was like late 60s, maybe early 70s, maybe still 60s. I forget the exact time frame. Okay, yeah. So in 1972, he was in this mental hospital for all these things. So really, this was a time where homosexuality was frowned upon, and people still believed that they could cure it, so to speak. Which is really sad because, you've got this deeply depressed person and it's truly who he is inside, but he is struggling with that fact because no one in society has accepted him for that. And, he was just cast aside. His parents stopped talking to him. Obviously, his wife left him. So there are some seriously, seriously deep-seated problems that got him to this point. So we can see, looking back, that this is a very broken person. Just remember that. It was within the sterile, controlled environment of the psychiatric hospital that Marshall encountered Bonnie Lou Nettles. Bonnie was a nurse with an interest in astrology and the metaphysical. She too had lived a life shaped by strict religious beliefs, but unlike Marshall, she had found her way to a more eclectic spiritual path. Their meeting almost seemed fated, that is, at least to Bonnie. Bonnie saw in Marshall a kindred spirit, a troubled soul seeking purpose and understanding. They connected on a level that transcended a normal relationship. Their conversations delved into topics of spirituality, destiny, and higher purpose. Bonnie began to conceive of a shared destiny for the two of them, a belief that they were meant to undertake a spiritual journey together. Marshall was deeply influenced by Bonnie's convictions. Again, he's a very broken person, and broken people are looking for purpose, looking for something to better themselves. So it's almost like he was a victim here. Her confidence in their shared mission provided him with a new sense of direction. For the first time in a long while, he felt a glimmer of hope, a possibility that his suffering had meaning and that he was destined for something greater than the ordinary struggles of human life. Now, let's turn our focus to Bonnie Lou Nettles and explore her background, her own struggles, and how her path intertwined with Marshall's, setting the stage for what would become the Heaven's Gate cult. Born in Houston, Texas in 1927, Bonnie grew up in a strict Christian household. Her early life was marked by tragedy when her sister Margie passed away in 1930 around the age of 5. The details surrounding her death are not widely documented, but it is known that this tragic event had a significant impact on Bonnie and her whole family. The loss of her sister at such a young age may have influenced Bonnie's later interest in spirituality and the afterlife. Really, not much else is known about her childhood, but as she grew older, Bonnie pursued a career in nursing. She married and had children, but her life took a drastic turn when she drifted away from the church and became involved in a theological lodge. Bonnie was fascinated by astrology, seances, and other spiritual practices like fortune telling. Her interest in the metaphysical world grew stronger, and she began to distance herself from her family. When she met Marshall Applewhite at the psychiatric hospital, their connection was immediate. They both shared a background of strict religious upbringing and a deep interest in spirituality. Bonnie began to convince Marshall that they were destined for something greater. They believed they were on a divine mission. Their bond grew stronger, and they decided they needed to leave their old lives behind to fulfill their destiny. Bonnie's marriage deteriorated as a result, and she ultimately abandoned her children. Marshall and Bonnie embarked on a soul-searching road trip, leaving everything they knew totally behind. So when I first read and watched a few videos about Bonnie, I was like, this lady is crazy. She grew up in a pretty religious household, but she was the type of person to, like, once she grew up and be old enough to form her own beliefs, went like the complete opposite way. And I don't know what her obsession with extraterrestrial stuff was, like why she was obsessed with it. But if you watch the documentary on Max, her daughter at one point goes into how they would just like sit outside, stare at the stars, and like wish that a UFO would come down and just take them away. Um, Really weird stuff. Like she was super into astrology and fortune telling. This is a person with ideas that are pretty far-fetched already. So it's very interesting to see her background and how she kind of morphed and grew over the years. But I believe that a lot of Heaven's Gate ideas came from Bonnie herself, which is just kind of interesting to look back and see. Because Marshall really wasn't into any of that until he met Bonnie. Hey guys, it's me, here with a quick and exciting update. If you're enjoying the deep dives into the mysteries and stories I cover, you're going to love what I have in store for you in our monthly newsletter. Every month, I send out an exclusive true crime newsletter packed with behind-the-scenes content, upcoming episode previews, and additional insights into the cases we discuss. But that's not all. Newsletter subscribers also get access to my curated list of true crime current events. It's the best way to stay connected and engaged with the podcast. So what are you waiting for? Head over to the website and sign up for the monthly true crime newsletter today. Don't miss out on all the extra content and perks I've created just for you. Thanks for listening and supporting our show. Now let's get back to the story. In the early 1970s, Marshall Applewhite and Bonnie Nettles formed what would become known as the Heaven's Gate cult. Their teachings were a blend of Christian apocalyptic beliefs, New Age spirituality, and science fiction. They disseminated their beliefs through pamphlets, which detailed their core doctrines, including the idea of extraterrestrial salvation. According to their teachings, they were walk-ins, or higher beings temporarily inhabiting human bodies to assist others in achieving their next level of existence. They believed in the imminent arrival of a spacecraft that would transport them to this higher plane. Applewhite and Nettles' beliefs were heavily influenced by science fiction literature and the emerging New Age movement. This unique combination made their doctrine particularly attractive to those searching for alternative spiritual paths. During this time, Applewhite was arrested and imprisoned for 6 months for failing to return a rental car, which he claimed was a divine mission. This period of incarceration only strengthened his convictions, reinforcing his beliefs that he was chosen for a higher purpose. So they're off doing their little spiritual journey, whatever it is. They're like traveling the US, but they don't really have a home. They're just sort of like scraping by doing odd jobs here and there just to make enough money to eat and to travel and whatnot. And slowly they're developing these belief systems, pamphlets, and, kind of like the foundations for their spiritual group. So it's kind of like the two of them on the road, Bonnie and Clyde type situation. They're stealing cars here and there, probably shoplifting some food and whatnot, and just doing really whatever they have to do to keep their mission going. A critical aspect of their dynamic was a rare psychiatric condition called folie-à-deux, or a shared psychotic disorder. Folie-à-deux is a French term that translates to madness of two. It is a shared psychotic disorder where a delusion is transmitted from one person, the primary or the inducer, to another person, the secondary or the induced. In some cases, the delusion can spread to more than two people. And when I read this, it didn't occur to me, but I was watching the trailer for the new Joker movie, and guess what? It's called Joker Folie-à-deux. So you can kind of see this relationship. It's sort of like the Joker Harley Quinn thing, partners in crime and partners in shared mental delusions. Also, I'm really excited to see that movie. I think it's going to be really good. And knowing this story too, and knowing sort of this weird psychotic disorder, I think it'll be really fascinating to see depicted in that movie. So in our case, Nettles, the primary individual, held the original delusion, which Applewhite, the secondary individual, adopted and then amplified. This delusional partnership was what set the stage for their teachings and their missions. Applewhite and Nettles began attracting followers by holding seminars across the US. They distributed flyers that advised their meetings, promising answers to deep existential questions and offering a path to spiritual enlightenment. These seminars had a decent turnout, with several people feeling a profound connection to their message and choosing to join them. As their following grew, Applewhite and Nettles renamed themselves Bo and Peep. and referred to their followers as sheep. Don't you just love that? So freaking weird. Life inside the cult was strictly regulated. Members lived in campgrounds, following daily routines filled with meditation, study, and communal activities. They discouraged individuality and personal friendships, promoting instead a unified group mentality centered around the question, what would Bonnie and Marshall do? Or, what would Bo and Peep do? Going against their rules could result in expulsion from the group. Already, we've got the Jesus complex. I'm telling you, it happens in every goddamn cult. What would Jesus do? What would Bo and Peep do? Are you kidding me? Already, they're just glorifying themselves. And it's ridiculous. Bonnie Nettles and Marshall Applewhite frequently spoke to their followers about an upcoming demonstration that would validate their teachings and prove the truth of their extraterrestrial beliefs. This demonstration was shrouded in mystery and held a significant place in their doctrine. They suggested that a powerful event would occur, showing their followers and the world the divine nature of their mission and the existence of the next level, a higher plane of existence. The idea of the demonstration became a tool to maintain control and keep followers aligned with their increasingly isolated and insular community. As members abandoned their previous lives to join the cult, their families were left behind, confused and deeply concerned. Many were unable to comprehend why their loved ones had chosen to disappear into what seemed like an increasingly secretive group. Family members often reported their loved ones missing, and some even hired private investigators in desperate attempts to locate and retrieve them. Because of this, the media soon picked up on the story, intrigued by the mysterious group that promised salvation via extraterrestrial means. News outlets began reporting on the cult, delving into the strange beliefs and the charismatic leadership of Marshall Applewhite and Bonnie Nettles. The coverage ranged from skeptical to outright critical, painting the group in a negative light and raising public awareness about the potential dangers of such movements. The sudden influx of attention posed a significant threat to Heaven's Gate. The increased scrutiny made it difficult for the cult to operate as openly as they had before. In response, Applewhite and Nettles decided to take measures to avoid further exposure. They instructed their followers to become more secretive and to avoid drawing attention to the group's activities. To continue their recruitment efforts without attracting unwarranted attention, Applewhite and Nettles devised a new strategy. Instead of holding large public gatherings, they began sending out pairs of members to discreetly recruit new followers. These pairs would travel from town to town, blending in with local communities while subtly spreading the group's message. They often posed as preachers or spiritual teachers, using flyers and word of mouth to attract small groups of potential recruits. The flyers advertised seminars that promised answers to life's biggest questions and offered a path to enlightenment and salvation. These seminars were typically held in nondescript locations like hotel conference rooms or community centers to maintain a low profile. Attendees would hear about the group's core beliefs, including the idea of extraterrestrial salvation and the promise of ascending to a higher level of existence. While this approach helped the group maintain a degree of secrecy, it also fostered a sense of paranoia and isolation among its members. They were instructed to avoid forming close friendships outside the group and to distrust outsiders, further deepening their dependence on Applewhite and Nettles. Despite these efforts, the group's notoriety continued to grow, and their secretive nature only added to the public's curiosity and suspicion. The media's portrayal of Heaven's Gate as a dangerous cult led to increased skepticism and hostility from the general public, making it even more challenging for the group to recruit new members. Good. No one should be joining this cult. Like, could you imagine? Sure. You're looking for like a new religion, a new belief system, and you want to get away from the mainstream crap that everyone's trying to feed you. You learn about a cool new belief, and you're like, yeah, okay, maybe I could get on board with that. You join the group, and slowly you are like molded into this person that you never used to be, not making friends, not talking to people. So, yeah, I'm glad that the media was reporting about it because it probably prevented a lot of people from becoming victims of this group. Applewhite and Nettles made two significant announcements to their remaining followers. First, they declared that the harvest is over, meaning they would no longer actively recruit new members. Convenient, right? Second, they claimed to have received a message from the next level, stating that the demonstration of their beliefs was complete and that the media's criticism had served as the demonstration. Again, how freaking convenient. From this point on, followers would have to rely on blind faith, and those who stayed were considered the official class. So the anticipated physical demonstration never actually took place, but the continuous expectation and subsequent realizations served to deepen the members' commitment and reinforce their beliefs in the group's prophetic vision. How many times does this happen? Like, they keep preaching that this thing's going to happen. This event is going to take place where all their followers will physically see and believe that this is true. And it never happens. But what do you know? They've been manipulating these people and brainwashing them for all this time that, of course, they're going to believe them because they're a part of this group now. Blind faith has been established and they're going to keep believing, really, no matter what the leaders say in most cases. In their final transformation, Applewhite and Nettles adopted new names. I love how they just come up with these new names. So from now on, they were referred to as Tea and Dough, a reference to the last two notes on the musical scale and a homage to Bonnie Nettles' favorite musical, The Sound of Music. The group entered what they called the camp phase, living in tents and campers, meditating and preparing for the arrival of the UFO that would take them to their next level of existence. Despite the strict rules and the many false alarms of the UFO arrival, the remaining followers continued to dedicate themselves to T and Dough's vision, isolated from the world and their previous lives. As time passed, strict rules and the monotonous lifestyle led to many leaving the group. By 1979, only about 40 members remained. Recognizing the need for stability, T and Doe allowed the group to move into houses. However, to avoid detection by authorities and private investigators, they relocated frequently, never staying in one place for more than 6 months. And in these communal living situations, I'm pretty sure there would be like 7 to 8 people living in a household at one time. So, with the 40 people that they've got, they had to buy like a few houses all sort of near each other or rent a few houses all near each other so they could all sort of like fit in these homes with multiple people living under them. It's like the weirdest thing, honestly. Members pooled their financial resources to support communal living expenses. As funds dwindled, some members were sent to work under fake names. The group also adopted new names, all sharing the surname Audi, with unique first name formats designed to promote unity. So the cult had a unique way of assigning names to its members, reflecting their belief in shedding earthly identities to prepare for the next level of existence. Members were given new names ending with Audi, such as Nerati or Gaudy. This suffix signified their small, humble, and obedient nature, like a child in the grand scheme of the universe. The prefix of each name was often a shortened form of the individual's original name, or a name that resonated with their new spiritual identity. I'm sorry. I cannot help but laugh. Um, don't mistake this as disrespect, but some of them just sounded so weird. In the documentary, they would show like the person's fake, well, not fake, but new assigned name in the cult. And I was trying to sort of like figure out like how they even came up with them. I read in some reports that they would take the vowels out of your real name and then add Audie. So for example, my name's Rachel. I would take the A and the E out. So I've got Rachel, and then I would add Audie. So Rachel Audie, pretty much, would be my name. So yeah, it's just a little weird for me. But we're seeing this theme again where you're stripping your old life away. You're stripping away your unique identifiers, and they're just trying to become these pure individuals who are all very much similar and are all not tied to this world in a physical and individual way. And again, this is a common theme in cults. Stripping away individuality can be so detrimental to someone's mental health in these situations, I think, because they become this person who is so deeply connected to this group that they start to believe that they won't ever be able to leave. And, you know, they've denounced everything that makes them them, and they give their whole lives to this belief system and these leaders. So it's just so fascinating, the psychology. There's so many little things that happen over time that build to this, you know, blind faith that we see in so many cults. This renaming practice was symbolic of their complete detachment from their past lives and earthly ties, reinforcing their commitment to the group's doctrines and their quest for spiritual ascension. It was a method to solidify the group's unity and collective identity, stripping away any personal history or individualism that could hinder their spiritual journey. By adopting these new names, members further embraced the cult's ideology, fully immersing themselves in the belief that they were on a path to a higher existence beyond the confines of human experience. For years, the members lived very disciplined lives, deliberately avoiding the trappings of modern society. They adhered to strict dietary regimens, abstaining from fast food and generally avoiding restaurants altogether. Their meals were simple and largely devoid of indulgence, aligning with their beliefs in purity and self-control. This minimalist lifestyle extended beyond food. They often wore identical clothing and maintained a communal living arrangement, which further emphasized their collective identity and spiritual purpose. And as I mentioned before, the group frequently relocated, moving from place to place across the United States. This nomadic existence was partly a strategy to evade scrutiny and partly a reflection of their belief in remaining unattached to any specific physical location. Through these moves, they sought to remain focused on their shared goal of spiritual ascension and detached from worldly distractions. Despite the frequent changes in their physical environment, their adherence to the group's doctrines and their dedication to their leaders remained unwavering. Concerned family members, distressed by the sudden and prolonged disappearance of their loved ones, banded together to form support groups. These groups were dedicated to sharing information, offering emotional support, and organizing efforts to locate and possibly rescue their relatives. Their determination led to coordinated searches, public appeals, and even attempts to infiltrate the group to better understand its inner workings and possibly reconnect with their family members. The family's collective efforts underscored the deep sense of loss and helplessness they felt, as they tried to navigate the complexities of the cult's tight-knit and secretive environment. In a rare moment of leniency in 1982, Doe and T allowed group members to write letters home on Mother's Day. This decision might have been influenced by T's own hidden correspondence with her daughter, demonstrating a glimmer of empathy and recognition of the members' familial ties. These letters provided brief but precious connections between the cult members and their families, offering a small window into the otherwise closed-off lives of their loved ones. The letters were closely monitored and guided by the leaders to ensure that they conformed to the group's ideologies and did not reveal too much about their activities. The following year, in another unprecedented move, members were granted permission to visit their families. However, the visit came with strict conditions. Members had to fabricate a plausible story to explain their prolonged absence. They were instructed to tell the family members that they had been studying computer science at a secluded monastery. This narrative served a dual purpose. It provided a cover story that explained their absence in a way that seemed both respectable and legitimate, and it also subtly reinforced the group's narrative of pursuing higher knowledge and enlightenment. Despite the carefully crafted deception, these visits allowed families to momentarily reconnect with their loved ones, even if the interactions were overshadowed by the overarching influence and control of the cult's leadership. For the members, these brief reunions were bittersweet, as they navigated the tension between their deep-seated beliefs and the emotional pull of their familial bonds. After years and years of living off the grid, maintaining a strict and secluded lifestyle with the group, one day, T received news that no one was expecting. Despite years of avoiding medical consultations, she finally visited a doctor and was hit with a devastating diagnosis: metastatic melanoma. This news would send ripples through the group and challenge the very foundations of their beliefs. Remember, T and Doe were alien beings, and the fact that she got cancer just proved or challenged the thought that she actually wasn't this being, that she was, in fact, human who could get diseases and could possibly die in the future. In an attempt to prevent the spread of the cancer, she had one eye removed. Bonnie's belief in her divine mission initially led her to dismiss the severity of her condition, but her health continued to deteriorate. This aggressive cancer continued to spread and eventually reached her liver. Her illness starkly contradicted her image as a perfect, pure alien being, which created a crisis of faith among the members. The group faced a critical question. What would happen if they lost their second leader and only Doe remained? T was eventually admitted to a hospital. Within a week of her hospitalization, she seemed to improve, a phenomenon sometimes seen before a critical downturn. However, this fleeting recovery was followed by her passing. Marshall, heartbroken and consumed by grief, wanted to be left alone to process the loss. He allowed the group to visit their families for 2 weeks while he grieved and figured out the future of the group. During the 2-week home visit, some members decided to never return, choosing to stay with their families instead. Those who did come back were deeply loyal and prepared to follow Doe, despite the profound changes and uncertainties ahead. When the members returned, Marshall had radical new ideas about their mission and the group's doctrine. He told them that they would no longer need to physically ascend to their spaceships. Instead, they would spiritually exit their vehicles. In other words, their bodies. According to Doe, after leaving their human forms, they would join T, who would be waiting for them in the next level of existence. Despite years of following the group's teachings, the members did not question Doe's doctrine, demonstrating the depth of their commitment. During this somber period, the group was marked by mourning and uncertainty. However, Marshall gradually regained his energy and refocused the group on their new mission. In an effort to recruit new members and re energize the movement, he produces a series of 12 videos in 1992, spending $30,000, which is the equivalent of $65,000 today.
Welcome to Beyond Human, the last call. We have a big picture to try to portray to you. You don't know us. You don't know what we represent. Beyond Human might say something, it might not, but it says a lot to us. And we want to share it with you.
These videos were broadcast on satellite TV, aiming to attract a broader audience.
And you can ward off those. I'll tell you what, Lucy and his kingdom have a lot of individuals who can work in the invisible and who can pound on your head and say, don't listen to that. Don't listen to that. I've found the truth for you, and I'll give it to you in the name of what you believe 2,000 years ago. You've brought that 2,000 years ago into today, and you're going to hang on to that history as if it were yours. That's true history. That was real. And it is yours. But when our Father's kingdom sends new information, sends updates, new opportunities, if you were really connected with our Father's information, if you really knew the truth that was in Jesus, you're going to see it here again. Unfortunately, you're seeing that same mind. What is in a soul is truth or falsehood. The mind of God or the mind of misinformation. That's the reason it boils down to we're either for him or we're against him. Well, goodness, we just got started. We haven't touched but 2 or 3 questions, and somebody just held up a card. I saw it. It said 30 seconds. So we're going to have to take up more issues at our next session. I'm glad that you have gotten these sessions, that you've watched this, and that you want to learn. I hope that the next level can use us as their instruments for you. See you next time.
Though the effort did not bring in any new followers, it did succeed in re-engaging some former members who decided to return. I'm always super excited to learn about obscure conspiracies, creepy ghost stories, and really anything that will keep me up at night. So if you have something you'd like me to cover, fill out the case submission form on the website. You can find the link in the show notes. Case closed. As the 1990s progressed, the group adapted to the rapidly changing landscape of technology, particularly the advent of the internet. Recognizing the potential of this new medium to spread their message and recruit new members, the group, particularly its more tech-savvy members, saw an opportunity to leverage the internet for their cause. These members created a web development service called Higher Source, through which they designed websites for various clients. This venture not only provided financial support for the group, but also gave them the skills and tools to enhance their own online presence. Heaven's Gate launched their website, heavensgate.com, which would become their final name. The site served as a digital hub for their teachings, doctrines, and recruitment efforts. It featured extensive content about their beliefs, including the promise of extraterrestrial salvation and the process of exiting their human vehicles to reach the new level of existence. The creation of heavensgate.com marked a significant shift in the group's visibility. The internet allowed them to reach a much broader audience than traditional methods. The site was filled with videos, writings, and detailed explanations of their philosophies, making it easier for curious individuals to learn about Heaven's Gate from the comfort of their homes. Okay, and it's crazy, but this website is still up today. I had no idea that it was still active and pretty much maintained, because you got to keep a website up to date and running for it to stay on the internet, I feel like. But It's still there. You can look it up and browse through all the stuff that they posted. And honestly, it's pretty damn good for being a website made in the early 1990s, like right when the internet was born. It's so weird to see. I would highly recommend just going and checking it out. Despite their efforts, the website and the videos did not result in a significant influx of new members. However, it did attract media attention, bringing Heaven's Gate back into the public eye. The group's online presence was a double edged sword. While it increased their visibility and spread their message, it also opened them up to criticism and skepticism from the wider public yet again. The use of the internet was a pioneering move for Heaven's Gate, as few other groups at the time were utilizing this technology for recruitment and communication. This digital outreach, although not highly successful in terms of recruitment, demonstrated the group's adaptability and commitment to their mission, even as traditional methods of attracting new followers began to wane. As the mid 1990s approached, Heaven's Gate began exhibiting significant changes in behavior, indicating that something monumental was on the horizon. Years of unfulfilled prophecies and failed predictions had left the group in a state of anticipation. But in the summer of 1995, everything changed with the discovery of the Hale-Bopp comet. Doe interpreted this celestial event as the long awaited sign. He convinced the group that a spacecraft was traveling behind the comet, and this spacecraft would be their final opportunity to ascend to the next level. According to Applewhite, this was their chance to reunite with T in the spacecraft. However, to board the spaceship, they would have to release their vehicles. The Hale-Bopp comet was expected to be closest to Earth in March 1997, and Applewhite declared that this was the time for their departure. The group began meticulous preparations for their exit. In 1996, they rented a luxurious $1 million mansion in Rancho Santa Fe, California. This was to be their final home on Earth. In their final year, the members indulged in what could be seen as bucket list activities, enjoying trips to places like SeaWorld and Disneyland and dining at various restaurants, including Taco Bell and fancy steakhouses. These activities seemed to be a way of celebrating their last days in their human forms and were a much different lifestyle compared to the years prior. As the date drew nearer, the group began creating what they called exit statements, recording videos in pairs. These videos served as a type of suicide note, where members expressed their happiness and readiness for their transition. In these recordings, the members appeared joyous and content, showing no signs of distress or hesitation.
Okay, we're going to begin our interviews today with Soroti. How long have you been in this classroom circumstance?
I've been in here since Valentine's Day 21 years ago.
Okay, and is there anything in particular you would like to say?
What would I like to say? Oh goodness. There's so much I want to say to you. Just about anything that would be of any significance to you is already on Heaven's Gate. I mean, this is kind of, in one sense, kind of silly. I would really strongly recommend if you could find Heaven's Gate, the book, or the website, go there, study it, read it. It would do you a lot of good.
A few days ago, I've been in the class for 3 years, just about 3-4 days ago, and I don't know, I just feel like I've learned so much about the next level and kingdom of God, kingdom of heaven, and on how best to cut all ties, attachments, and addictions to self and this world. And this is my prepared statement. It's very simple. And I don't know, I think my constant asking long before I entered the class was the key, the constant begging for the real facts, the real truth as how to get out of this world and grow beyond it, and rise above it, and leave it behind, both self and this world.
Hi, sorry. We just, are interviewing a number of people just to see a number of people express some interest in saying something on camera to the people that might, get this tape. And we just wondered if you had anything particularly you wanted to say to people.
Well, I just want to let everyone know how lucky and happy I feel to be here, and let you know that what we're about to do is certainly nothing to think negatively about. We're all choosing of our own free will to go to the next level.
Get kind of emotional when we start trying to convey our true feelings, because we know, I think, that the media is going to just, whatever. They're not going to present it the way we would like to be presented. Anyway, I wish you could all be here. I wish you were as lucky and fortunate as we are, I guess.
Doe himself was ecstatic in his video, claiming to be at peace and ready for the journey.
This is March 19, 1997. And I'm Doe. Some called our partnership T and Doe. That's not my name, but that's how I'm referred to on planet Earth at this time. I've been talking to my students that are sitting in front of me about talking to you. And let me say that our mission here at this time is about to come to a close in the next few days. Well, we're so excited we don't know what to do, because we're about to re-enter the level above human. And we feel like that my older member and the crew working with my older member has said to us, we can't wait any longer. I mean, we've done everything we can, and you don't need to stay there any longer. It's time for us to get on with the refurbishing of this planet. It's time to start the cycle. We're right at the point where you can't stay there any longer without being significantly disturbed by what has to happen to this planet. So it's okay with us. We're very, very glad. We hope that we took advantage of the time that we had incarnate in these human vehicles, and will be of better service to the next level because of it.
Despite the explicit nature of these videos, they did not raise immediate alarms among outsiders. Perhaps people thought the videos were fake or simply did not understand the gravity of the situation. Nonetheless, the members were clear about their intentions, and their enthusiasm and serenity were unsettlingly apparent. As March 1997 approached, the group finalized their preparations. They believed that their time had come and that they were ready to leave their earthly lives behind. The stage was set for one of the most tragic and bizarre mass suicides in modern history, driven by the belief that they would ascend to a higher existence aboard a spaceship following the Hale-Bopp comet. On March 17, 1997, the Heaven's Gate group made their last public appearance, dining together at Marie Callender's restaurant in Carlsbad, California. Each member ordered the same meal: iced tea, salad with tomato vinaigrette dressing, turkey pot pies, and cheesecake with blueberries for dessert. This meal was a final communal act, a precursor to the tragic events that would unfold the next day. Oh, it's so weird how eerie it resembles the Last Supper. I don't know if Marie Callender's are still around. Like, we don't have any near where we live. But it's weird that their Last Supper was at Marie Callender's. Like, maybe a nice steakhouse or something as your last meal. But no, they really wanted, I guess, turkey or whatever, chicken pot pies. As some people were marveling at the Hale-Bopp comet, Heaven's Gate members were meticulously preparing for what they believed to be their ascension to a new dimension. The group had long maintained that their human bodies were mere temporary vessels. They were convinced that by shedding these containers, they would be able to join a spacecraft trailing the comet, which would be taking them to their next evolutionary level. The suicides were carried out with chilling precision. The process began with the first shift of members who followed a specific recipe. They ate a few tablespoons of pudding or applesauce, making room for a potent dose of phenobarbital. This substance is a barbiturate that induces sedation. After eating the mixture, they washed it down with a vodka beverage. This combination of phenobarbital and alcohol was chosen for its ability to induce unconsciousness and ultimately death. Phenobarbital is known for its efficacy in treating seizures, insomnia, and withdrawal symptoms from benzodiazepines and alcohol. However, in high doses, it can lead to severe toxicity. Symptoms of barbiturate overdose include cognitive impairment, decreased heart rate, incoordination, nausea, muscle weakness, and decreased body temperature. Death typically occurs due to respiratory depression, hypotension, and coma. Once the first group had consumed the mixture, they laid down in their assigned beds. Each member then placed a bag over their head, securing it with an elastic band. As the phenobarbital and alcohol took effect, they lost consciousness and the plastic bags suffocated them. The remaining members then went around to each deceased member, removing the plastic bags, repositioning their arms at their sides, straightening out their clothing, and placing a square purple shroud over the top half of their bodies. This procedure was repeated for the next group of 15. This entire process took place over 2 to 3 days. On the final day, 9 members were left. 6 of them followed the same procedure, leaving just 3 behind, including Marshall Applewhite. These last 3 ensured that everything was in order before they too prepared to ascend. Before proceeding, they mailed out a few packages. Then Marshall Applewhite was the third to last to die. After consuming the lethal mixture, he laid down in his master bedroom, and the final 2 members followed the same steps as the rest of the group. These last 2 members carried out each step simultaneously to ensure that no one would be left alone. They were the only ones who did not have the purple shrouds placed over them. In their eyes, the graduation was complete. The Heaven's Gate members believed they had successfully exited their human vessels and ascended to the next level of existence, leaving behind a meticulously orchestrated scene that would shock and puzzle the world. On March 25, 1997, an inactive member of Heaven's Gate named Rio DeAngelo received a FedEx package that would lead to one of the most chilling discoveries in modern American history. Inside the package, DeAngelo found 2 tapes. One labeled Doe's Final Exit, featuring Marshall Applewhite, and another containing a compilation of the exit videos made by the rest of the group members. Attached to the tape was a letter stating, "By the time you read this, we will have exited our vehicles." The next day, DeAngelo, filled with dread and curiosity, asked a friend to drive him to the mansion in Rancho Santa Fe, California, where the group was residing. Upon arrival, he found the door unlocked. As he ventured inside, DeAngelo decided to document what he feared might be the aftermath of a mass suicide. With a video camera in hand, he began filming each room, capturing the harrowing scene of lifeless bodies. Even after years of diving into true crime and serial killers, or even seeing like various photos of crimes like here and there, this footage honestly made me feel uneasy. So this is your official warning to skip ahead if you would rather not see it. I'll put the timestamp right here. But yeah, there's nothing graphic in it, but it is just so chilling and so eerie to see, knowing like what led up to this. After confirming his worst fears, D'Angelo called 911 and anonymously reported a cult suicide. When deputies arrived at the mansion, they were confronted with a scene that would soon become infamous. 39 bodies, meticulously arranged in identical positions, each covered with a purple shroud. The deputies' discover quickly escalated into a full-blown media frenzy, with news outlets around the world broadcasting the grim details. The initial confusion surrounding the identities of the deceased was compounded by their uniform appearance. Due to their short haircuts, lack of facial hair, absence of jewelry, and other gender-neutral characteristics, initial reports mistakenly identified all the victims as men. In reality, the group comprised of 21 women and 18 men, ranging in age from 26 to 72 years old. Each member wore identical black sweatpants, black shirts with embroidered armband patches that read Heaven's Gate Away Team, and brand new black and white Nike Decade sneakers, chosen by Marshall Applewhite because they were on sale. In addition to their uniform attire, each member had a $5 bill and 3/4 in their pockets. Former members of the cult explained that this specific amount of money was traditionally carried by group members when they left the house, symbolizing their final departure. Alongside the money, each member also carried an ID, passport, or birth certificate on them so that each could be identified. Autopsies later revealed that the combination of phenobarbital and vodka would have caused a very slow and agonizing death, challenging the perception of a peaceful transition that the group had envisioned. The tragic mass suicide of Heaven's Gate sparked widespread debate among cult experts and psychiatrists. Many professionals argue that cult members are often manipulated and coerced, stripping them of their free will. Despite Heaven's Gate members insisting that they were free to leave at any time, experts pointed out the deep emotional attachment, fear of the leaders, and dependency on the cult that could make leaving nearly impossible for many members. This psychological grip is why many former cult members require extensive deprogramming therapy to overcome paranoia, guilt, and fear. The mass suicide of the Heaven's Gate cult remains the largest self-inflicted mass death on American soil, a somber testament to the power of cult manipulation and the tragic consequences of blind faith. The discovery of the bodies and the ensuing media coverage brought global attention to the dangers of such extremist beliefs, leaving a lasting impact on public perception of cults and their influence over individuals. The initial media coverage of Heaven's Gate mass suicide was both extensive and sensational. News outlets across the globe covered the tragic event, with headlines focused on the bizarre nature of the group's beliefs and the uniformity of their deaths. The public reaction was a mix of shock, horror, and fascination. Many people found it difficult to comprehend how 39 individuals could be so deeply influenced to take their own lives in such a coordinated manner. Discussions on cults and mass suicides intensified in the aftermath. Experts were frequently invited on talk shows and news programs to explain the psychological mechanisms behind cult behavior, the concept of brainwashing, and the influence of charismatic leaders like Marshall Applewhite. The Heaven's Gate tragedy prompted a broader conversation about the vulnerabilities of individuals to extremist beliefs and the need for greater awareness and intervention strategies. The fate of the surviving members of Heaven's Gate varied. Some who had left the group before the mass suicide struggled with immense guilt for not being with their fellow members during what they perceived as a significant and necessary event. This guilt drove several former members to take their own lives in the months following the mass suicide, with estimates suggesting that between 3 to 6 individuals ended their lives to join their crewmates on the supposed spaceship. Despite the group's dissolution, the legacy of Heaven's Gate persisted. The group's website, heavensgate.com, continues to be managed by surviving members, serving as a digital archive of their beliefs and teachings. The site remains a subject of curiosity and study, attracting visitors who seek to understand the mindset and motivations of the cult members. The Heaven's Gate mass suicide left a lasting impression on popular culture, inspiring a range of books, movies, documentaries, and academic studies. The story of the cult and its tragic end has been explored in various media, often highlighting the dangers of the charismatic leadership, the psychology of groupthink, and the allure of apocalyptic beliefs. Documentaries such as Heaven's Gate, The Cult of Cults, have provided an in-depth analysis of the group's history, its doctrines, and the individuals involved, offering viewers a comprehensive look at the factors that led to the mass suicide. So this was that documentary that I mentioned earlier. It is a 4-part series on Max, and it is so well done. I highly recommend watching this if you're interested in the Heaven's Gate cult. They go into such small details. And what was interesting too is they interview a lot of the previous members who were in Heaven's Gate. And you kind of see their side, like reasons why they joined, reasons why they stayed, and reasons why they sort of still, sometimes in some cases, still believe in the doctrine and the whole belief system. But it's very interesting to see all of the little details that went into this group. It is a very, very well made docuseries. And again, I highly, highly recommend watching it. It's so good. The continued fascination with Heaven's Gate is evident in the ongoing discussions and studies within both popular culture and academic circles, underscoring the enduring impact of the group's story on society's understanding of cult dynamics and human vulnerability. Marshall Applewhite's role as a leader was central to the formation and maintenance of Heaven's Gate. Applewhite possessed a persuasive and magnetic personality that drew people to him. His ability to articulate a compelling narrative of extraterrestrial salvation, coupled with his intense conviction, made him a powerful figure in the eyes of his followers. Charismatic leaders like Applewhite often employ psychological tactics to maintain control, such as asserting their unique access to divine or cosmic truths, creating a sense of urgency around their prophecies, and fostering a strong in-group identity among members. Applewhite and Nettles used various methods to keep their followers loyal and obedient. They employed psychological tactics like love bombing, where their new recruits were showered with affection and attention, creating a strong emotional bond. They also instilled a fear of the outside world and the consequences of leaving the group, which discouraged dissent and exit. By presenting themselves as the only path to salvation and enlightenment, they created an environment where members felt dependent on their leadership for spiritual fulfillment. Group dynamics and isolation played crucial roles in reinforcing Heaven's Gate's beliefs. The cult's members lived in a highly controlled environment, often isolated from their families and society. This physical and social isolation amplified the group's internal dynamics, making it difficult for members to question or challenge the beliefs being propagated. The close-knit community fostered a strong sense of belonging and identity among members. This sense of belonging was reinforced through shared rituals, language, and goals, creating a powerful in-group mentality. Social and psychological factors such as the need for acceptance, fear of rejection, and the desire for purpose and meaning were significant in members' decisions to join and to stay. The isolation and constant reinforcement of the group's doctrines created an echo chamber where dissenting voices were minimized or even silenced. This is just another reason why people stay in cults. The sense of belonging, coupled with the purpose and the meaning that they get from the group, just creates this environment where it is so hard to leave. Heaven's Gate shares similarities with other well known cults, such as the People's Temple, led by Jim Jones, and the Branch Davidians, led by David Koresh. Like Heaven's Gate, these groups were led by charismatic leaders who claimed to have unique access to divine truths and promised salvation to their followers. They also employed psychological manipulation, social isolation, and strict control over members' lives. However, Heaven's Gate also had distinct characteristics. Unlike some other cults that sought money, fame, or sex, Heaven's Gate appeared to be driven by a genuine belief in their extraterrestrial salvation narrative. Applewhite and Nettles did not amass significant wealth, seeking celebrity status, or engage in exploitative sexual relationships with their followers. This has led some observers to speculate that their intentions were pure in the sense that they truly believed what they were preaching. I'm on board with this because, yeah, what was their motive? There's no big motive other than the fact that they truly, truly believed that they were going to ascend to the next level and they had to save as many people as possible. I think they just got so caught up in their delusion that it became unhealthy and toxic, and it just grew to this horrible, horrible tragedy. Understanding what draws people to cults like Heaven's Gate involves examining a complex interplay of psychological and social factors. People are often drawn to cults during times of personal crisis or when they are seeking a deeper sense of purpose and meaning in their lives. Cults offer a sense of community, certainty, and a clear path to salvation or enlightenment, which can be incredibly appealing to some. The ability of individuals to claim they are divine prophets often stems from their intense conviction about the psychological needs of their followers. Followers may project their own desires for guidance, meaning, and certainty onto the leader, reinforcing the leader's authority and their divine status. The motives of cult leaders can be varied and complex. Some may genuinely believe in their teachings, while others may be driven by unconscious psychological needs. For instance, some professionals have speculated that Applewhite might have suffered from schizophrenia, which could explain his visionary experiences. Others suggest that Applewhite's difficulties with his sexuality and the loss of his own family might have driven him to create a group where these issues were controlled or just completely eliminated. Bonnie Nettles' role as the primary inducer of their shared delusion suggests that her own beliefs and psychological state significantly influenced the group's doctrines. Her background in astrology and New Age beliefs likely contributed to the development of Heaven's Gate unique theology. Altogether, Heaven's Gate, like many other cults, drew people in by offering a sense of community, purpose, and certainty. The psychological and social dynamics within the group, combined with the leadership of Applewhite and Nettles, created an environment where extreme beliefs and behaviors could flourish. Understanding these dynamics helps to shed light on the broader phenomenon of cult behavior and the vulnerabilities that can lead individuals to become involved in such groups. You know, when you take a step back and really think about the Heaven's Gate cult, it's pretty mind-boggling how extreme ideologies can pull people in. It's easy to wonder how anyone could be convicted to take such drastic actions, but when you dig deeper, you start to see how complex and powerful those forces at play really are. Like, first of all, it's A reminder of how dangerous extreme ideologies can be. Heaven's Gate wasn't about money, sex, or power like some other cults, like we said. It was about this intense belief in a higher purpose and the promise of their salvation. That kind of conviction can be incredibly alluring, especially to people who are searching for meaning and are feeling lost. It shows just how influential a leader like T and Do can be, especially when they tap into people's deepest, darkest fears. And this brings up a crucial point about the importance of mental health treatment, in my opinion. Many cult members are likely to struggle with various personal issues. Marshall himself might have been dealing with mental health problems like schizophrenia, which could have easily influenced his beliefs and his actions. I think ensuring access to mental health care could help address these issues before they spiral into something so tragic like this. And then critical thinking is another big one. In a world where we're constantly bombarded with information, I think it's vital to ask your own questions and constantly analyze what we're being told. Cults thrive on suppressing critical thought, encouraging blind faith, you have to believe me, otherwise you won't be saved. Your salvation depends on your belief. And teaching people, especially young people, to think critically can serve as an extremely powerful defense against these manipulative tactics. And individual autonomy is also key. Cults often strip away a person's sense of self, replacing it with the group's identity. So, encouraging people to maintain their personal identity and stay true to themselves is probably, in a lot of cases, what can help them resist the pull of such groups. So, this is mainly about fostering a sense of self-worth and confidence that doesn't depend on external validation. And finally, let's talk about compassion. It's really easy to judge those who fall into cults, but the reality is that these individuals are often vulnerable and just seeking connections or just seeking answers for themselves. Showing empathy and understanding can make a big, big difference. If you know someone who might be getting involved in something harmful, approach them with care and concern and not judgment. Compassion can create an open dialogue that might just help them see things from a different perspective. In the end, Heaven's Gate tragedy served as a powerful lesson. It's a reminder of the importance of mental health care, the power of critical thinking, the value of individual autonomy, and the need for compassion. By focusing on these areas, we can hopefully prevent such tragedies in the future and support those affected by these extreme ideologies. Okay, so while researching, I found this video of a reporter going into the home that they were found in a few weeks, or I think it was a couple months after the incident. Because I was curious. I was like, what happened to the house? And this is what I think about sometimes in a lot of cases. Did people live in these houses after a murder happens, after stuff like this happens in them? And hopefully I'm not the only one, but I find it really fascinating and I find it really eerie at the same time. So I did a little bit of research, and after the mass suicide in March 1997, the home became a focal point of media attention and public curiosity. I mean, clearly I'm not the only one because people were very interested in what happened to the house pretty much shortly after it happened. Reporters, investigators, and even some curious onlookers were drawn to the site. The mansion was essentially a crime scene at first, with law enforcement meticulously documenting the area to gather evidence and piece together the tragic series of events. But that video I mentioned of the reporter going into the home provides a haunting glimpse into the aftermath.
Welcome to Heaven's Gate.
It's a place where few cameras have been. Behind the front door of the Rancho Santa Fe mansion, where 39 cult members took their own lives. Real estate and environmental consultant Randall Bell gave us the tour.
This is the main living room. This was the main gathering place of the people that lived here. You'll notice that gurneys banged into the wallpaper. The drapery has got to go because the odor gets into the fibers.
The Italian marble in the entryway also has to be replaced. It too was damaged by the gurneys coming in and out of the home. Workers have been surveying the damage for weeks now. So far, the price tag is topping 6 figures.
So it's not only the carpeting, the wallpaper, and the marble that has to go, but also thousands of dollars worth of beveled glass, which is in these rooms. The consultant says he wants it to go because of the memories.
Memories that are kept alive through photographs like these. This is the room with the body underneath the beveled glass, and this is what it looks like today. That's why they want it changed. Bell says his job of overseeing the renovations will take about a year. The owner then plans to move back in.
Once the initial investigation wrapped up, the mansion became a symbol of both morbid curiosity and deep sadness. The property itself, a beautiful multi-million-dollar estate, was eventually cleaned up and put on the market. However, the stigma attached to it made it a tough sell. Potential buyers were undoubtedly aware of its grim history, which likely deterred many. Over time, the house was sold and resold, often at prices lower than its market value due to its dark past. Each owner had to deal with the property's history in some way, whether by trying to completely renovate and change its appearance, or by simply accepting the part of its story. For those fascinated by the story of Heaven's Gate, the house represents a physical connection to the events that transpired. Videos and photos from inside the house post-suicide serve as a chilling reminder of the human capacity for belief, the influence of these leaders, and the tragic consequences that can follow. In many ways, the house itself becomes a part of the larger narrative of Heaven's Gate. It stands as a silent witness to the group's final moments, a monument to their belief system, and a stark reminder of the dangers of unchecked ideology. So yeah, that is Heaven's Gate. I'm just baffled by this case. Like, seriously, watching that documentary, I was just like, what the hell? Like, this is crazy. This is some crazy shit. And eerie and creepy, honestly. Like, I just don't understand what drives people to think this way. I highly, highly recommend watching the documentary on Max, Heaven's Gate, The Cult of Cults. I got a lot of my information from that just because there were so many firsthand interviews. The psychology behind cults is so interesting. I definitely want to cover more cults, but tell me what you guys think. Would you consider this a mass suicide where each member had their own free will to decide to take their own life? Or do you think that there was one murderer and 38 victims found in that home in 1997? I'm curious, so let me know what you think down in the comments. Also, if you made it this far along, leave me this emoji in the comments. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you're on YouTube. Or if you are listening to the audio version, feel free to leave a review. And thank you guys so much for your support. It means so much. I'm Rachel, and until next time, stay weird and stay wicked. Bye.